My name is Em. My pronouns are they and them. I'm a movement coach, teacher, and a stand-up comedian. Next thing I want you to do, we're gonna stay in this position. You're gonna reach over to one side. You're gonna stretch your side body, your lats. We are given stories that are told about our bodies. And I think, strangely, training for me and personal training and like working with people and their bodies is less about like how many squats you can do and more about how can you unwind those old stories that do not serve you and your existence on this planet and your capacity to feel joy and do the things that you want, and how can you tell new stories, you know, inhabit the body from that space, like that there's inherent knowledge there waiting for you, especially people who are told that their bodies are expendable, that their bodies are not worthwhile or don't have as much value, or just people who are just kind of asked to not be at home in their bodies, and like that's just what that's supposed to be good enough for them. Surviving is supposed to be good enough.
My gender identity and what I seem to face on a daily basis, my identity in general, is the idea of coherency and like, do these things fit to make a complete person? Like, does it match? And I find that often it does not. And I've learned recently that it does match. It's just, it doesn't have to match. Like, that's not really the
Lately, I've had to now go back through all these years of my life and all these different points and contend with the fact that I was always kind of out of myself. And it's kind of sad, actually. There's a grief of like, I was so uncomfortable and I didn't have language for it. And this is not to say the discomfort has stopped, because when you're someone who, you don't fit into the hegemony, right? You're not white, you're not of a certain socioeconomic setting, you're not able-bodied. When you're not one of those things, you're always gonna be at odds with things. Like, you could be at complete peace within yourself. Like, I feel very peaceful, but it doesn't mean that I'm not gonna go out in the world and find friction. Friction where other people are not finding it.
So you might have seen in the advertisements for the show that this is an all-female lineup, and I'm here to tell you that is false, because I am here. I am here, and I can legally show you my nipple. Which, let me tell you, is the same nipple I had when I had breasts. It's the same one. So I mean, what's up with that?
Stand-up for me is very much me taking these stuck points of these things that I'm like, I don't know how to make sense of this moment. This is a hard moment, or this is a confusing moment, or this is a ridiculous moment, and then I write jokes through it. But I do not make fun of my queerness or my transness, and I really try to, when I tell jokes, to stay within my lane. Like, I find that the reason that comedy is helpful and therapeutic to me is that I'm speaking only and exclusively from my own experience about my own experience, because that's all I know.
What is enough? How much do we have to hurt or rejoice for it to mean something? Rather, does meaning run along an ever-changing continuum, or are we all arrested to a simple formula that determines whether we can rightfully feel what is present in our infallible hearts?
I think that a part of my power as a human being is that I've gone from different cycles of expressions. So I think when I was a more like feminine, cis-appearing female, like I was yelled out the window. People, you know, crossed boundaries with me frequently. And then when I was like a butch, like queer person, or like really more like androgynous looking, people ignored me, which that was something I didn't realize was happening. And now, as a masculine appearing white person, it's like super entertaining to be approached differently now. I was like, okay, maybe it's really hard being a white man, but now I have this proof that there is a problem here. You know, I have a lot more choice without anyone questioning me. Like, there's just this inherent respect, and there's a lot less labor that I have to do to make it through the world. And it is much more easeful to be than my previous experiences. When I was more feminine appearing, no one called me sister. They were always like, young 12-year-old child, why are you at the brewery by yourself? Where's your parent? My medical transition was like, I mean, honestly, my voice dropped. Other than that, it was not super interesting. Like, my personality didn't drastically change. I was still myself. I didn't realize that everything was so boring and normal. Like, I was just like, oh, this is pretty uninteresting. I wasn't doing that kind of like documentation, recounting the history of my transition. But then I'm in front of a 7th grade classroom. I'm in front of a full class of like people doing like weightlifting stuff, right? Coaching. I'm on a stage. And there was just one point where I realized, I was like, wow, for someone who wanted to be really private, I am literally transitioning in front of people. And I gotta say, when you're in a 7th grade classroom, everyone's going through puberty. The boys are, the girls are, I am. I'm going through my 2nd puberty, but like, we're all going through it, and it's really funny. So I don't think my experience is that unique. I think everyone better get prepared for it, because it's gonna happen to you. Your hormones are gonna shift. I'm a language person. I have an MFA in creative writing. I've always been into languages and the specificity of language. So they, them is a pronoun choice that I think encapsulates the most of me. I don't think it's enough, but it's good enough for now. I believe a multiplicity of truths. I believe that truths can be happening simultaneously. I believe that I can be having different emotions in my body all at once, and one doesn't cancel out the other. I think the more that you start to think that way, that there isn't this left and right, this binary thing, this Western rational way of thinking, it kind of like breaks the spell. A lot of the ways that we speak to children, especially in early grades and even beyond that, are in these very gendered formats. And it leaves little space for children to be as they truly are. It not only makes trans kids or gender creative children safer, but it also ensures that all other children are allowed to like the things that they like without fear of like retribution or being made fun of. They get to be their whole selves too. I don't know all the answers. Like, I don't know how to make people comfortable with people who are different than them. I don't know how to ease things within our systems of oppression that we live in, but I do think that the biggest thing I'm learning is that there's this interesting dichotomy between one's own individual work and really being honest with oneself and one's family and one's history, and then also being responsible to and answering to your community. That's why I think the multiplicity thing is so important, because I think you can acknowledge what's going really well for you, simultaneously acknowledging things that are also difficult and hard too. And I think you have to be able to do both those things to honor your own experience, but also recognize your own power so that you can use it to work from your privilege to counteract systems of oppression.